is a game between two giants, Garry Kasparov with the white pieces, Mikhail Tal with the black pieces. It was played in Brussels in 1987, and Kasparov starts us off with d4. Tal responds with knight to f6, Kasparov plays c4, Tal plays e6, and Kasparov puts his knight on c3. So both knights are out. Kasparov has obviously one pawn more out since he, of course, moved first. And now Tal puts his bishop on b4. This is a nice idea. You're getting your bishop deep into white's position. You're also pinning the knight to the king. And you've also, in the minimum amount of moves possible, cleared the way for your king to castle kingside. So, nice little start with the black pieces. Kasparov plays e3, and Tal indeed castles, so ties the record for the fastest castle possible in chess with the black pieces. And Kasparov now puts his bishop on d3. And this is going to be a very nice and valuable bishop. It's going to attack this h7 square and cause a lot of problems for Tal, as we will see. Tal now tries to break the position open with d5. The white king is still on e1. The black king is safely tucked away, so you want to break open the position, cause chaos. And Kasparov says, I'm not afraid of that. Let's exchange a bit on d5. So some exchange happens on d5, and then Kasparov brings his g1 knight to e2. Adds some support to his other knight, but I'm going to tell you to focus on this knight during this game because it's going to make a really impactful journey, and I'll just say that. And its impact on the game is going to be huge. That's going to be in contrast to Tal's knight, which we're going to see makes a lot of moves but doesn't achieve much, and that's honestly could be the difference between life and death in this game. So here Tal just continues to attack as he does with c5. Wants to add pressure to this knight, and Kasparov senses the kitchen getting hot and just castles to safety kingside. Tal brings his knight to c6, and now Kasparov says, okay, I want to get rid of this bishop. I'm going to play a3. Before, just Tal has a nice little exchange here, takes on d4, obviously the threat of the knight, so Kasparov takes back, and then Tal says, okay, I'll trade knight for bishop, and a couple of trades on c3. So if you put this position in an engine, it would say white has a slight advantage. I guess you have this bishop is very useful slicing into black's camp. The queen is going to come to c2 and add sort of a battery on h7. This dark squared bishop hasn't even developed yet, but it's attacking plenty of squares in black's camp, and white has the bishop pair, so that's probably the reason for the advantage here. Tal makes the first of these this kind of wayward knight move. He has the knight on c6, and he brings it to e7. I think the idea is getting it closer to the king side and more in the action. But this allows Kasparov to put his queen on c2, and now you have a nice battery here. This sort of indirectly pins this knight to f6, because now it's the only thing that's defending h7 and preventing taking a pawn with tempo with check. So Tal completes development with bishop to d7, and Kasparov jumps right into it with bishop to g5. Again, we saw how important this piece was defensively, so Kasparov's going to try to get it off the board. Tal makes the second knight move with this. So this knight came from c6 to e7 and now to g6. He's getting ready for Kasparov to take this f6 knight off the board. Now this g6 knight blocks the path of the bishop and the queen, so reasonable kind of obstacle to that knight is serving. Before taking the knight, though, Kasparov actually just plays f4, and this is going to, as we'll see, this knight's going to cramp Tal's style, but it's also going to allow the bishop, I always mix those up. It's going to allow the rook to come into the game with a nice rook lift and join in the attack. So now Tal says, okay, that's enough, let's get this thing over with. I'm going to attack your bishop with h6. This pawn was under attack on h7 anyways, so Kasparov happily trades, and the queen comes to f6. But even now, Kasparov is able to get this f5 move in. This obviously comes with a tempo on the knight, so the knight has to run away. So if you're keeping track at home, that's c6, e7, g6, and back to e7, so 4 moves, and the knight is sort of still in its own home camp here. And on the contrary, Kasparov has a very nice move here with knight to g3. This adds another protector to the f-pawn, and this is important because there were 3 attackers on this e-pawn, on the f-pawn, and now it becomes the most defended pawn in history. It has a knight, a rook, a bishop, and a queen defending it. So a nice little move, a nice little maneuver to get his knight closer to the attack, but also to add a defender to this pawn. So now Tal, I'm not really sure about this move. He brings his knight back to c8. Not quite the starting position on b8, but close. And now we've had 5 moves, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. And the knight is back on the 8th rank. So not really what you want here. And you can see what Kasparov is threatening with his knight. He's really threatening this knight to h5 move, which comes with the tempo on the queen. Before he does that, though, he has a beautiful rook lift to f4, and it's a good thing that this pawn is not on f4, because then the rook couldn't really come to f3 because it's kind of blocked by the knight. So plenty of space for the rook and the knight to both join in the attack. The more the merrier, Kasparov says, and he brings his rook in, and this is going to become a very dangerous roving rook if Tal allows that. Instead, Tal kind of shows the reason behind his knight to c8 move with knight to d6. I guess slightly better square for the knight, but again, just a lot of knight moves and not on a very threatening square. Whereas again, we immediately see Kasparov play a much better knight move. Well, never mind, not immediately. First he brings his queen to f3, doubling up with the rook, and Tal puts his rook on e6, controlling the e-file. Now we see a really nice knight move from Kasparov, the move that was kind of, we saw it coming a while ago, and there was really no way for black. I'm sure Tal saw it too, but there's no way to stop it, because you obviously, you don't really want to play g6 and then have pawn takes with with a discovered attack on the queen. So not much Tal can do about it, and Kasparov puts his knight on h5, and this comes to an attack on the queen. So Tal is forced to retreat his queen to safety to d8, and now Kasparov plays the move that just blows open the game and creates sort of a crushing attack. So see if you can pause for a second and find that move. Okay, hopefully you ended this knight's amazing journey with a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is knight to g7. And if we just think about the sacrifice, it's nice because we've opened up this g file now. There's no pawns on it, and these really powerful and well-placed pieces are going to actually be able to get after the king. But actually, this is not a sacrifice, and the reason it's not is because the king cannot take the knight. It legally can, but if the king takes the knight, then you get the immediate f6. This pawn is protected twice. So the king certainly can't take it, and if the queen takes it, you lose your queen, and now you're in big trouble as black, because if you bring your king to h8, which is the best move, you get the immediate queen to h4. And now you're threatening, this will clearly lead to mate on h6. Let's say, like, black, if that would be a really bad move. Let's say black makes some silly move, then you get queen takes on h6, king has to move to g6, g8, and then this is checkmate. So you're threatening that. The only way to defend this as black is to give away an entire rook. So you play rook, check, e1, check. Kasparov's rook very happily comes to e1, now controls the e-file. And then you have to play this queen to f8 move, where you're protecting the h6 pawn. But this, now the material is technically even, but black obviously has a massive attack. You can do a number of things with, white has a massive attack. Black's pieces are all just sort of scrambling to defend. This pawn is cramping black style. So this, this is a way better position for white. Many moves win here. And the point is, you cannot take this knight on g7. So instead of taking the knight, Tal says, okay, well, here's my knight. Here's my knight's sacrifice, and plays knight to e4. Comes with the tempo on the queen, but Kasparov says, whatever, I'm just going to take with the bishop. And, it's not a bad trade for Tal, for, the black pieces, because this bishop was eyeing this h7 square all game, and it was an important attacker in those hypothetical attacks, so not a bad trade. Tal takes back with the rook, but this allows f6, which just cements this knight forever on g7. Going to be a very difficult knight to get rid of. You no longer have a dark squared bishop, you don't have a knight, so this knight is just here to stay. King now moves to h7. The idea is you want to protect against the queen taking on h6. If we have queen h4, queen takes on h6, so trying to cement the defense a little bit. But Kasparov says, I'm not material, I'm going to trade, and trades the rooks off on e4. And now Kasparov brings his queen to f4. This attacks the h6 pawn, so the king is now glued to the pawn, but it also attacks this e4 pawn, which you're threatening to take with check. So just, the queen is bearing down on the king, the knight is eager to help, and it's not looking good for Tal. Tal says, I need to protect this pawn. It's a passed pawn, but I also don't want Kasparov to take it with check, so he plays bishop to c6. And now Kasparov plays a bit of a cheeky move. Well, not yet. First, he plays rook to e1, and this is going to be the start of a nice rook lift. Really, the only square that makes sense right now to get your rook on the third rank is e3. You can't obviously come to d3 or f3 because then the pawn will take it. So you want to get to e3 and then sort of get into the game. So he plays rook to e1, and now Tal brings the queen to f8, adding some phantom defense to this h6 pawn in case the knight moves. And now Kasparov plays a really cheeky move. The recommended move here by the engine is knight to f6. Now you have two attackers on the h6 pawn, which for the moment is properly defended, but the rook's going to come and tip the scales in white's favor. But instead of playing that, Kasparov actually just plays c4 and says, okay, I'm gonna block your bishop and harass your bishop and force it to move back. And I'm gonna take this pawn with tempo. So a nice kind of sassy move. Tal says, okay, I can leave the defense of the h6 pawn for a moment. I'll gobble up a pawn with my queen on a3. And Kasparov says, okay, get back there. I'm bringing my knight to f6. I'm sorry, to f5. And now there's two attackers. So basically, Tal is forced here to play queen to f8. But now we get the idea that we sort of discussed. Rook lift to e3. Really no way to stop the rook from coming to the G and H files and wreaking havoc. And Tal tries to defend somehow by playing bishop to d7, but then you get the rook coming to the uncontested G file. Tal trades the knight, which was a very useful attacking piece, and let's just say a quick word for this knight that had an amazing journey. I'm probably getting the squares wrong. No, these are the right squares. Had an amazing journey, opened up the G file, and made this attack possible. So it's now traded off. Queen takes on f5. This checks the king. Only move is king to g8, and then Kasparov played the finishing move. Many moves win here. You can go after this h pawn if you like, but the fastest way to win is what Kasparov did naturally, which is rook to g7. And here, Mikhail Tal resigned because you are in a ton of trouble. You're threatening, if it's white's move, black plays some silly move, then white can play queen to h7 checkmate. The only way to stop this checkmate is to just suck it up and take the rook with the queen, but then the pawn takes, and now you are up queen for a rook. You have a passed pawn of your own that's going to promote, and this is just completely winning for white. So Tal saw this, of course, and resigned the game. A really awesome game. I think the difference, at least as I saw it, was the two knights. Kasparov's knight made really productive moves, got in a position to deliver an attack, whereas Tal sort of unfortunately wasted a lot of time moving his knight around, trying to maneuver it, play defense, or maybe some muddled offense that I didn't see. But great game. And whenever you have two legends playing against each other, it's sad, but there's always a chance that one of them doesn't look like a legend because the other one is playing so well. But anyways, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Drop a like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.